Hello? Please feel free to complete the surveys upon your return. Again, please feel free to complete the surveys upon your return. We have them located in the back of the room. I don't think anybody's paying attention. It's okay.
Hello? 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 Okay, so just one thing. If you have not had a chance to take a look at the robot that is outside of the door, please take an opportunity, check the robot out. The robot is actually getting ready to be stored and prepared to be shipped back to its home location in Indian Head, Maryland. So if you wanted to take a look with the robot and interact, now is the time before it actually is preparing to be packed back up. So thank you again. We are looking forward to possibly having the robots at IT East. So if you plan to come to IT East, look forward to some more entertainment and more things relating to Spectrum.
Hey, Test, test, test. Well, good morning, teams. Here we go. 9:30 is quickly approaching, so we will respectfully ask that you start finding your chairs or seats or places to hold you up from not falling down or stand up, but start closing up your conversation so we can give Gunnar Sergeant Black from Stratcom our full undivided attention. For those of you that heard the shout earlier, thank you for grabbing those surveys for the room and filling them out. If you have not done so, please go back over there and grab one so we can get as much feedback as possible regarding the venue. The other part is that we're starting to, for good reasons, we've seen some new faces on day 3 of the Spectrum Conference, at least on our summit. If you haven't done so, please check in with our support staff in the back as we're trying to help keep track of all of you that are actually here. So help us. We'll try to do another reminder. Just a little from up here, you can see some familiar faces that are new to the current discussion. So with further ado, we already confirmed. Can we do a mic check? Joey, can you check your microphone, please?
Hey, Jose, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you much. We just wanted to make sure that we got the microphones working. As we just kind of text out, you will be following Mr. Gunner Sergeant Black from Stratcom.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jose.
Okay, thank you. And without further ado, Gunner Sergeant Black.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gunnery Sergeant Black. I work at the Joint MSO Center, other words known as the JAC, at U.S. Strategic Command. So as far as some of the topics that we're going to go over today on some of the responsibilities that I do within the JAC is I'm going to go over the history overview, our structure, construct of it, and then some of our component levels, and then we'll transition to some of the other demonstrations and the operational sponsorships that we have. And at the tail end, I'm going to have two slides for a GPS overview due to certain classifications, so bear with me. So as far as the history of where we began, if you guys are not familiar with the National Defense Authorization Act or the 2023 NDAA, per Congress, they put into law saying, hey, DOD, you need to single out a single entity within a certain organization to go over MSO. From there, we transitioned to the Unified Command Plan, which is signed by the President of the United States, or other words known as the UCP. And in there, he directed that the commander of U.S. Stratcom is the lead operational sponsor for Spectrum. So if you guys aren't aware of that, that is also one of his requirements as far as the commander of U.S. Stratcom. He is solely responsible for Spectrum on top of his other responsibilities within the nuclear enterprise. From there, we transitioned to the SecDef memo, where per the SecDef, he's basically reiterating what Congress laid out in the NDAA and the push out of what the president put in the UCP. And then he also put in his guidance from a SecDef position to the commander of U.S. Stratcom. And then later on, so since that got published in June of 2023, in July of 2023 is when the JAC officially stood up at U.S. Stratcom. So as far as the JAC, here's our flow chart. So I work directly for 2-star, Major General Anthony. She's doing big things right now. So currently she's in the Beltway dealing with Congress per the guidance from the 4-star right now. And I think they're going over some topics right now of the current Spectrum bill that we're looking at right now. From there, as you guys can see in the picture in the green, that's our 2 component levels. Those are both ran by 06s. And I'll have further discussions a little bit later on these slides to kind of tell you where they at and some of the responsibilities that they do within that support the JAC. As far as everything in purple, so starting on the far left on the screen, you see the GEMSO lead. So we have our own little division right there to where it's really nothing but EW personnel and anything that involves GEMSO planning. We also have the GPS team, so some of the slides that you've heard earlier in the week about GPS and Stratcom, yes, I have a couple slides that will talk on the GPS portion. From there, we also have a spectrum management division to where we have civilian and contractors that directly support General Anthony, and we have 2 active duty components. I am one of those components. On top of, we have an Air Force Master Sergeant that's filling the other active duty side of the house to support General Anthony. And then lastly, if you look on the far right side of the screen where it says J2, we have direct intel and counterintelligence support that is specifically focused on Spectrum. So not just Spectrum management side, we're looking at the whole GEMSO construct of EW, intel, and counterintelligence. So more to follow on that. So if you guys would like to have some questions on that or want to have a sidebar, please feel free to talk to me offline and we can go have a further discussion. So as far as our relationship overview, The Jack does a lot. As you guys can see it right in the middle, Jack's in the middle. We deal with all of our JDERs, meaning from like the one shop all the way up through the J8. We also deal with every combatant command GMSOC, which is the Joint Spectrum Operations Cells. Every combatant command has one. So we engage with them, including our own GMSOC. The other outside entities is we deal with NATO partners, we deal with OSD, Joint Staff, DOD-CIO, the NSA, and another one that's not depicted on here is we also engage with Congress as well through legislation affairs. And as you see at the top, we have four working groups. So General Anthony is part of the co-chair for the EMS SSG. In conjunction with some of the other co-chairs are Joint Staff and DOD-CIO. So here we are as the JAG. I'm going to reiterate again, as right there it says right in the bold, UCP mission, Commander U.S. STRATCOM is the operational lead for Spectrum, for the Spectrum Enterprise. So it's not just, oh, hey, for the Marine Corps or anything. I had to take my Marine Corps hat off and I put on the joint hat. So I got to look at the DOD holistically. So if I ever reach out to the Marine Corps or to the Navy, there's specific reasons. It's basically in direct support to not only General Anthony, but it's going to be a follow-on straight to General Cotton, who's my commander, in conjunction with leading to the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. So some of the things, as I already touched on, I have the two components, the JUC, which is the Joint Electromagnetic Warfare Center, and then we also have the Joint Center for Electromagnetic Readiness, which is the JCER. So as far as this aspect goes, we're responsible for GMSO support to all the combatant commands, government agencies, and so forth. So as far as you guys can see down here, this is what the JUC is actually ultimately responsible for that feeds into the JAC. As you guys can see on the education piece at the very bottom, it says the Joint Electronic Warfare Theater Operators course. That's been outdated, so if you're familiar with JUTOC, it's no longer a thing. It's been replaced and been Joint Staff certified as GMSO-TOC. So with that being said, I'm also one of the lead instructors for that to be able to talk about the spectrum management and the integration with MSO to the joint environment. And then not only that, I've also shared that same brief to Headquarters Marine Corps DCI with the IMD, which is the Information Maneuver Division, and some of you folks as well. So if you guys ever get the opportunity, especially in uniform, not in uniform, and get the opportunity to go to that course, highly recommend that you do so. And as far as that, that course is taking place in San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. And then as you guys can see, the JUC has a lot of engagements, whether it's partner engagements where they're meeting with their counterparts, equivalent to, hey, how are we getting after GMSO and some of the other things? We're getting our NATO partners caught up to speed on some of that language. They also produce a lot of different products, whether it's radio coverages, radar coverages, or whatnot, that is directly supporting a lot of the combatant commands. But if you're an end user as far as like at the service level, feel free to reach out to them. They can also help provide better support for you guys on your exercises and or real world operations in theaters. So the JCER, as you guys can see, they're based out of Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada. So they do a lot of great training. They do a lot of evaluations, especially on, before it used to be Northern Edge, where we were mainly focused on. Now it's transitioned to, now we go to the services and anything that's leading up to a pre-deployment exercises. So if you have any MUs or any other unit that's going to be deploying, the JCER is ultimately responsible to go over there and do the GMSO accreditation to make sure that you are thinking about GMSO. And we're not there to fail you. We're there to highlight the needs of, you need to be looking at all these different aspects. So hemp. So it was on my my second slide earlier. Hemp is the high altitude electromagnetic pulse. So it's an experimental phase right now, but the main entity of it is it's basically hardening certain structures, and the frequencies are directly supporting the executive branch communications, whether it's airborne or emergency notification communications. And I'll just leave it at that due to classifications of certain things. But here's the MIL standard. and it's also in the ACP 190. So who in here in the room has ever heard of BoltQuest? So a handful of y'all. So for those that are not familiar, it's a joint staff-led event. It's a demonstration capabilities event where it's gathering all of our NATO partners or ally partners. So we just had it take place at Camp Lejeune this past year. We had 19 countries in Camp Lejeune's backyard, along with every branch of service and several program offices, leading up to about 2,300 plus participants in BoltQuest. From there, there's a lot of different things that the joint staff want to do a get after, and one of those things that I've highlighted is Guide. So if you've never heard of Guide, it's right there on the screen. I'm not going to read it to you, but the main end state of it is it's basically getting from the strategic level to the tactical edge, being able to have the interoperability and information exchange moving forward, which will ultimately lead into targeting. As far as the spectrum requirements, as you guys can see depicted on the screen, it's from the HF range all the way up to EHF. So we had about 400 plus frequencies that were directly supporting all those participants that I've said earlier in the slide. As far as the HF thread concept, and you guys have been hearing about this all throughout the week, preaching beyond line of sight. So there's a lot of vignettes from the HF portion within BoltQuest that are trying to be achieved right now, especially with the wideband HF portion. Obviously, it's a challenge right now for OCONUS, but however, I know Ms. Vernita Harris from DoD-CIO has put it on the WRC 27 agenda, so we will have some more engagements with that moving forward. So hopefully we can be able to help out some of the Marine units that are overseas, whether it's Japan, because I've been here in Japan, Korea, Australia, and some of these other places, whether it's in UCOM and so forth. So hopefully we can be able to achieve that moving forward at the next WRC. And then the last thing I'm going to hit on for BoltQuest is, so BoltQuest 25, it's going to be in 2 iterations. So if you're familiar with Fort Pickett, well, its name change is Fort Barfoot, Virginia, so that's the first iteration of that. The second iteration of it is going to take place in UAE. All right, so GEMSIS. Stratcom is the operational lead. So as you see everything on here that everybody's been hitting on, we also had DISA earlier talk about it in the week. Stratcom is the main one that's taking lead on this. So with that being said, if you're having any Spectrum 21 problems and you don't know who to talk to, you have a Marine Corps source at Stratcom. However, that doesn't mean you go directly to me. Definitely leverage your chain of command to get it up to me, so that way if there is a bigger problem, we're getting with PEO Spectrum and saying, hey, there's a problem, are you aware of it? Because we've already had some issues take place just this past year to where I had 1 MEF and two MEF. They were having issues, and we were able to call PEO Spectrum directly, and they got it fixed within a day. Other things that we're going to talk about is, as you guys can see on here, everybody keeps talking about, hey, when are we going to modernize? When are we going to modernize? Everything's outdated. Well, let me tell you this, their DoD-CIO hosts a working group called the EMS IT Modernization Working Group. And then we also, that just recently stood up, is the DoD IT EMS Capstone. That working group is a daily meeting every single day to go over all these topics to try to refine some of the requirements. That way we can help make things a little bit more user-friendly and make it a little bit more modernized. And that's supposed to go all the way up through February 5th. More to follow, but at the end of the day, we are still doing some testing on a lot of these different platforms that are out there right now. It's not going to make its way down to the service just yet because we got to refine a lot of the products moving forward. All right, as you guys can see here, EMBMJ. To a lot of you, it's probably a buzzword. To us, it's not a buzzword. So it's electromagnetic battle management for joint. So I know the Marine Corps and the Navy and a few others are using the EMBM portion. So I know the Marine Corps is doing Spectrum Service Framework, SSF, and I believe the Navy's doing RTSO. And then you have the other branches are looking at other means as well. So what separates the EMBM versus the EMBMJ is that there's supposed to be a direct plug-in. So if the combat command has a unit and you have an EMBM capability, you can directly plug into that. We're not there yet. It's still ongoing testing. However, it's supporting the combat commands. JTFs that get stood up, and you're also directly supporting with the gym socks. As you guys can see here, as far as situational awareness, these are like 4 different categories of what EMBMJ does. So as far as situational awareness, it's basically painting that the EMOE in a cop field environment to where we, as the gym sock, can see everything what's going on, ranging from GISROs to, hey, where's all the spectrum assignments going, and so forth. As we move down to decision support, that's kind of getting your COA development or modeling and whatnot, something similar to what you saw in that video earlier in the week. Maybe not to that extent, but it's giving you that cop feel to where it's going straight to the combatant commander to where he's got to make a rapid decision on site. So right now, there's still further testing that'll eventually get implemented starting next month. More to follow on that, so we're still doing some user validation tests right now, but hopefully we can refine some of these products moving forward. And then the last thing I'm gonna hit on is the command and control. Right now, people are talking about it, but the requirements, what are the actual requirements that we need to get finalized? And that's ongoing efforts between DOD-CIO, the DISA team, and to include STRATCOM. And then not only that, is it gonna benefit all the MILDEPs moving forward? Because we're not trying to make another platform to where it's basically we're shooting ourselves in the foot and everybody's like, man, I gotta do one product over here and then I gotta extract it and put it in another way. We're not trying to do any of that. We're trying to make things as user-friendly as possible, and that's the ongoing discussions that we're having in the IT EMS modernization working groups. All right, so now we're on GPS. I know a few people have said that STRATCOM has 60 days, whatever. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm mainly here to talk about the process. As soon as the request comes into us, that's when the ticker starts. The main concerns on the next slide I'm going to talk to you about is the after actions of GPS. But for now, as you guys can see in the bottom of the slide in yellow, STRATCOM will reject if it's under 38 days of your start time. So what does that really mean? Well, that means that as you, not the customer, but as it goes up through the chop chain, and eventually I know for the Marine Corps it'll go to NMSC, NMSC has to do a vector check on it, and then DISA will also have to do a vector check, and then from there they got to get it over to STRATCOM. The main concerns that I've seen, or the challenges that I've seen, is, oh, we submit the request. Well, US STRATCOM has a SharePoint page on SIPR. You have to do your own checks and balances. If you don't do that and it's not in there, then we're not tracking it. Plain and simple. From there, do we have any FAA in here in the room? All right, so FAA will know this. They have 30 days to be looking at your request, making sure everything's been deconflicted. Here's the issue. The FAA will not look at that if you have administrative issues on any part of your request. That 30-day ticker will not start. So what does that mean for you guys? Make sure you do a thorough check on your stuff, do all the deconflictions, make sure you have the appropriate layovers, making sure that you're not overlapping somebody else's test. Plain and simple. From there, once it goes through all the vector checks, FAA's been blessed off on it. It goes for GOFA, which is General Officer or Flag Officer level engagement, to where General Anthony will sign it. So I heard a gentleman here the other day mention, well, STRATCOM can get by with maybe 37 days. Yes and no. And the reason why I say that is because if you're gonna go under that timeline, then you need to be coming to us at a 4-star level engagement. We just had something happen just within the past year where, hey, we were under certain timelines within a certain window at a certain location that I won't disclose at this time. However, it made it to the 4-star level at a certain combatant command. They had to talk to our 4-star because the main issue is if somebody else is 4-star and this is a valid point, then it's going to be on you. However, if you use that one 4-star engagement, then you're basically one and done. And what I mean by one and done is like, hey, there's no more, hey, can you help me out with this in the future? Because at the end of the day, if we start letting that or be lenient on the timelines, then you're gonna, as the end customer or whoever it is, you're gonna continue to engage with the 4-star, and then the 4-star is going to be kind of like, well, null and void at that point, meaning that my general is not going to have it. My 4-star is not going to have it, saying, you know what, we're not going to do it. We've done too many favors for you. Does that make sense? So there's that. Next, you get the bless off from StratCom. We move to the monitoring test. So you're actually monitoring. You're on the ground doing your thing. You get a phone call from the FAA saying, hey, you got to be a stop buzzer. And you can't execute that test for however long your test days are. Say, we'll give an example, 4 days. You can't execute for 3 days. For whatever reason, you need to put that in the after action of what exactly happened. Or if they didn't call you and you only needed 2 days out of the 4 days, be a good steward and let everybody know within the chop chain saying, hey, I only need 2 days to do my actual testing. Because we have other folks that do this because we do about 200 tests a year. And all those tests get relayed back to Congress on all the back briefs. So this is what leads me into the after action. You have 30 days. By the time your event is done, you owe StratCom 30 days. Basically meaning I need an after action that's fully uploaded into the SharePoint page at StratCom. So which is going to lead me into kind of get into that getting approval process, right? So with the after action, you guys need to be like, give me the 5 W's. Be detailed as possible. Because if you give us vague information that wasn't really relevant to anybody, then can we really fight for your behalf to be able to execute more of these tests moving forward when we get to the congressional levels? Not really. So that's why I'm harping on you guys as far as the Navy and the Marine Corps. If you're going to do this, please be detailed as possible, whether it was, hey, we only needed X amount of time to do testing, or, hey, something happened, real-world event, took away our mission, turned into a wasted opportunity for the end customer, but in turn, we as StratCom can at least fight for you moving forward. As far as this, I've already kind of hit on it enough as it is. Make sure that it's on the StratCom SIPR SharePoint page. Make sure you're mindful of being good stewards of making sure, like, hey, are you tracking? Is StratCom tracking it? Leverage your chain of command. Obviously, I'm there. So the big takeaways that I've seen within the past year and a half I've been sitting in the seat is, so if you're not familiar with who Sheila Keen is, she's basically the GPS goat at StratCom. So what that means to you guys is when I start hearing her complain about Navy or Marine Corps folks, guess what I'm immediately doing? It's not my job, but I'm immediately messaging those folks on Teams or emails where I'm picking up the phone call saying, what'd you guys do to get Sheila upset? Because at the end of the day, she's got a job to do. As I told you, 200 tests a year, that's a lot. So just keep that in mind. Like, I'm going to be a good steward of where my position is to basically help you guys out to where you guys can be able to get to the timely, get the request through in a timely manner to where we can get the FAA support, get their thumbs up, so that way in turn you can be able to execute your testing. Does that make sense? At this time, does anyone have any questions for me?
Hey, Gunnery Sergeant. Great brief. Thank you. Lieutenant Commander Hadley, the after-action report you talked about, is that looking at just executive summary style document, or do they actually want the test data that came out of it as well?
We want as much data as possible. Like, what did you get the most bang? Did you get the most bang for your buck? Is really what it comes down to. If not, what can we do as StratCom can help you get a better test? That's the ultimate question first. That way we can fight on your behalf too when we fight with Congress for the most part.
Thanks.
Does that answer?
Yep.
FAA.
The other thing I'd say is when you send those after actions to Sheila and the FAA has 2 days that we had to do for whatever reason, we won't get into that here, ensure that you turn around and actually state what you could or could not accomplish. I think that then just adds to your justification for the support of GPS events.
No. Thank you.
Gunnery Sergeant, Major Cheverati from Expeditionary Strike Group 3. I know you got a background at the tactical level as a spectrum manager for the MEU. And now, you're literally at the highest strategic level I think you could get at STRATCOM. What are some things we can do at the tactical level? I may, as a MU commo or a regimental commo, have a sergeant or a staff sergeant that's my spectrum manager. What's some stuff that we can do, better at the tactical level to help out at the strategic level? You talked about some of these tools here that I think a lot of folks maybe not are familiar with. But what's some stuff that we can do better, down at that tactical level to help out?
All right, so great question. I would say for the most part is take full advantages of some of the training opportunities. So I mentioned GymSys. I'll go back to a couple of those slides. So GymSys on here, they usually have like a monthly time frame, if not a quarterly time frame for spectrum managers can utilize and actually get exposed to not only spectrum management or Spectrum 21, Huns Widow for the host nation part of the house, to include the stepstones and some of our other repositories. But that's not just the end-all be-all. They need to be reaching out to other seasoned spectrum managers to kind of pick their brain, whether you're on the West Coast, which I know you're in San Diego, and then talking to the folks on the East Coast, because we all bring a different flavor to the fight. And at the same time, so you mentioned the MU. If you're a MU spectrum manager in here, you need to be actively engaged with your Navy counterpart, because I don't know how many times, I know the Navy's pulled out and they've got their own course, but the main thing is that you need to be talking to the chief, the senior chief, or the petty officer first class, depending on who it is, because without that interoperability, you're not going to know how to support your respective MU, especially when you're afloat. And not only that, you need to be able to share your experiences, say, hey, this is the support that I do on the ground side, and share that with your Navy counterpart. So if anything, it's more of an information exchange. Do the training not only just for this, just for like checks in the box for some folks, but take it seriously, because at the end of the day, you could be in a position to where, from where I stood at when I became a spectrum manager, from like the artillery level, going to a MU, taking over the entire base as far as a MEF, and then now I'm at the strategic level. So take advantage of it, because you never know. You could be put in the fire, and you need to be able to figure things out, not only on your own, but we're always here to help you. Because somebody here within this room has done it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's great. And I think that's a great point you bring up. I mean, you literally, Gunny Black managed the whole spectrum for the Kabul evacuation, did a hell of a job. So I know that you can be that staff sergeant or that sergeant that just kind of gets thrown into it. But I think having some of these tools available is a big help. So thanks, Gunny. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, sir. And for you guys that are not aware, he was Major Chivarati was my MU communications officer.
Yeah, I was trying to be under the radar, Gunny.
Does anyone else have any questions for me?
I just want to read what NMSC put on here for his question. Better planning in advance is key to getting what you need.
That's a great statement. As far as better planning, that's always kind of like the buzz phrase, I guess you could say, because at the end of the day, you always got to work with your 3 and your 2, and always talking to your customers because long story short with it all is nobody knows what they don't know. So don't be a gatekeeper, be able to share that information. Other than that, does anyone else have any questions for me before I close or conclude my brief? Nope. All right, at this time, my name's Gunner Sergeant Black. My point of contact is at the end of the slide. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to me afterwards. Other than that, thank you.
All right, team. So having uniformed folks in the podium is one of the things that we are identifying as we love to hear. We're going to encourage to have a little more. And sir, I know you were trying to stay off the radar, but if we can get those commos up here behind the podium, because we need to know what the spectrum managers and the community have to be able to fulfill those commos that are not dove into this community. So just a public service announcement. Sorry that I get to call you out. Also, the Lincoln commo is another one that some of us would like to recommend her to speak on the next go around, because those lessons learned from the ship is something that we just, sad to say, we just don't know in the Beltway. And the only way to get us when we are here, please, data dump on us so we can know what we need to focus on. So thank you much there. Now, without further ado, we'll keep rolling. So the next briefer is going to be Joey Cantalupo from DISA spectrum. Joy might take over.
Can you hear me?
We definitely can, Joy. So the floor is yours.
Okay. So hi everybody. My name is Joy Cantalupo. I work for DISA, PEO Spectrum specifically, and I am the division chief for the Electromagnetic Sharing Systems branch. I want to thank Department of Navy for inviting me to speak. Unfortunately, I with workload, I just don't, what you see on the right now, the slide is the only one I have. So you will have to listen to me talk through this. So my topic, well, sorry, one more thing about my branch. My team and members of my branches are responsible for the execution of 3 spectrum relocation funded transition plans. AWS 3 high, or the 1750 to 1780 megahertz band, 3450, well, 3.45 gigahertz, which is 3450 to 3550. Some people call it ambit. That name remained after the actual initiative to make that spectrum available. And then CBRS, system band radio service, 3550 to 3650 megahertz. My topic is really, now that we're at the end of the AWS 3 transition plan, I was the program manager for most of that until June of 22, after my division chief and lead retired. So then I became the responsible transition plan lead and responsible officer, and then got the other transition plans within my branch, as well as the team that are executing that plan. As part of that, under our transition plans, we, PEO Spectrum and my team, are responsible for leading the coordination discussions between DoD and the wireless network providers that won spectrum licenses during the FCC spectrum auctions. We just call them the licensees. We lead coordination discussions between DoD and non-federal incumbents for access to the band. On AWS 3, that is the broadcast auxiliary service for sharing in 2025 to 2110 megahertz. We develop standard coordination business processes, workflows, and analytical approaches and tools based on the coordination procedures that were established for the band by the regulators, NTIA and FCC, and our interactions with our federal sharing partners. We also lead internal DoD coordination group meetings to discuss coordination status of requests that are coming in, any risks or challenges, and then we come to, if there are decisions to make, we work with the MilDeps to come to consensus for things like, any improvements that we make to our analytical approaches, any changes that we need to make to our business processes because there's something we didn't know about going in. Business processes on the industry side that we weren't aware of. And then the last part of that is we developed the cloud-based automated capabilities to facilitate these coordination activities with our federal and non-federal stakeholders. Right now, DISA, or my branch specifically, we are responsible for the development, maintenance, and operations of 4 portals, and soon to be a 5th. But for 1755, it's the early entry portal that is early entry access and indefinite sharing between the licensees. and DoD inside of DoD coordination zones. And this early entry access was spectrum sharing until while DoD was still operating on the band, and until DoD completed their transition plan tasks to relocate or to transition out of the band. There are 2 indefinite systems, that are staying in the band, and I'll talk about that a little more. The 2025 2110 Spectrum Management Coordination System, SMCS, is for the indefinite sharing between Broadcast Auxiliary Service, the BAS incumbents, co-primary, but NAB to the BAS operations. And we've been working with them to gain access for prioritized the AWS-3 systems that we're relocating or transitioning out, out of 1755 to 1780, and we're gaining access to 2025, 2110 for comparable capability because they couldn't compress all their operations into 1780 to 1850. TARDIS, the Telecommunications Advanced Research and Dynamic Spectrum Sharing System, that's the sharing with the CBRS incumbents in 3550, 3650, and it's used to schedule DoD spectrum use to ensure protection from non-federal users in the band and in portal-activated dynamic protection areas. The 4th one that we have right now is the interim portal coordination system that's supporting our initial coordination efforts in 3450 to 3550. Its infrastructure is exactly like the early entry portal, but this is so we can share in cooperative planning areas and periodic use areas. That will be retired soon and be replaced with the automated spectrum coordination system, ASCS, as the long-term capability to support spectrum sharing with increased automation, visualization, and analytics and metrics. So I want to talk a little bit about AWS-3 and some of the lessons learned, but I think I'd like to just talk about AWS-3. I'm talking about high. DISA did not have a transition plan in AWS-3 low, so I'll talk about that. We actually, we had 2 portals or 2 and spectrum sharing efforts in this band. So transition high was AW3 high was all about moving operations out of 1755 to 1780, compressing operations in 1780 to 1850, and moving operations to other bands, including 2025 to 2110, which was also called the alternate band. There are actually 3 types of sharing in AWS3 high, and 2 of them where DoD is the incumbent, and 1 where DoD is requesting access from a non-federal incumbent. So, like I believe I said it before, early entry sharing, it was sharing while DoD was still operating until they moved their operations out of the band. The licensees submit requests about their proposed network laydown to the early entry portal, and with a 60-day time clock to return an integrated DoD response. Also, with the early entry portal, there is indefinite sharing for 2 systems, Army jitters and StatOps, and each of them had a little bit of twist. JTRS indefinite sharing the request is similar to what we did with the other systems. that were that for early entry sharing. Same coordination request, data, proposed laydown. For SAT-ops, and we returned a yes, no, or approved, denied, sector by sector laydown response. With the opportunity to go back and for the licensees and DoD to talk to see if there were any chances to get additional greens, but for the most part in AWS 3rd and with the early entry portal, the licensees decided that they would just wait for the transition to happen rather than try to implement things like notching, to coexist. And it seemed to work. Sorry, back to SAT-ops. SAT-ops was a different kind of indefinite sharing. They can deploy, they sign a coordination agreement with DoD. That coordination agreement, I believe, was like a 30-day window to get that executed with additional information that they would provide. Sorry, I'm forgetting it off the top of my head, but I know it's 911, and a couple other things, but I think mitigation plans, and then they submit their deployment plans, and that the format of those look very similar to the coordination requests that the licensees were submitting through the early entry portal as a regular early entry request. And then the third type of sharing is where industry was in the incumbent. Like I said before, we're sharing with BAS, think electronic news gatherers that operate in CONUS as well. And that process is, the coordination business process is defined in an MOU between DoD and the broadcasters. But there is no, in determining access, there was no like 60-day process like for early entry. We in our role, we helped, we asked the MILDEPs to define the priority locations. The BAS reps, worked with their local folks to try to establish home channels where they could and have those as pre-coordinated channels. If they couldn't do a home channel, they would still tell us if active coordination requests would suffice or no, could be done. Some kind of sharing, but it would be DoD submitting a request, and in some places, no sharing feasible. Probably some of the most difficult is around where you guys are in Southern California or out there. In general, all of I think these has gone well. There's always bumps. Spectrum sharing is hard. It requires time. For folks to come up with to make those determinations and then and get approvals all the way down to the stakeholders, the folks that are actually operating the system, to make sure that we're not that the response that we're providing isn't going to impact or harmfully interfere. It definitely requires patience, and sometimes that is hard because everybody has their missions that they need to want to perform, and sometimes that when there is no patience, or when patience is thin, sometimes respect is a little hard. Respecting each other's positions can be also as hard. Compromise and flexibility is also required, as well as because there are situations that that just need to be addressed in some form or fashion. One of the things we worked, some of the processes we worked through on AWS3 at the very beginning of AWS3 when they were trying to get approvals. The handsets were just coming out, and they needed to do field trials for it. There's a acronym that I don't remember off the top of my head. But we worked out a process where everybody defined their requirements, how many handsets they were going to need, when they were going to operate, and establish timeframes. In the very beginning, actually, there was one of the licensees wanted to do a field trial that involved us, DOI, and I believe DOJ, and that that ended up being like a daily call in the morning, and they did their testing at night. So there were definitely phone calls. There's special events, where the licensees have a big Comic-Con or Coachella concerts, events at the National Speedway that they needed bandwidth, and that took negotiation from the stakeholders that were still in the band. Sometimes it was, the negotiation could be a little rough, but everybody understood and tried to be really flexible, which was really nice. The other big thing with AWS3 was the pandemic. When everything shut down, we found out there were emergency stays where licensees wanted to use AWS3 licenses in areas that had that were FCC held, and to meet the milestones, the time frame for those emergency stays, it was a huge lift because there were still a lot of systems in the band, and took a lot of good cooperation with each of the MilDeps and our team, just passing information back and forth and getting agreement that that the licensees could do help the country, but if DoD was operating, there were point of contacts and a way for everybody to communicate. Let's see. The other essential thing for spectrum sharing is structure. Establishing business processes and workflows, having weekly or biweekly meetings with stakeholders. For us, we had them both with internal DoD, we had them with the licensees when we needed them, and BAS on a regular cadence at a regular time to discuss where we are, and to make sure that we were communicating with DoD, make sure they understood, and where they are, if they were behind on getting their analysis back, to just help get those issues resolved. So we were doing what we needed to do in the time frame we needed to do it. If there were things that we needed to that needed a little more attention and focus, we established tiger teams. We also established we held tabletop exercises to make sure that we weren't missing any gaps, whether it was in a business process or with software. Our automated capabilities, make sure there weren't any big gaps, and that everybody understood how and what they needed to do. And then the other important structure piece is having face-to-face when you can, just not relying on Teams. Pandemic didn't help some of that, but sometimes it's good just to actually it is very good to see people face-to-face and not just on a Teams chat. The last piece is having this and the infrastructure, the coordination infrastructure. I I know it says coordination portal, but it's actually a system of things. It's not just, I mean, the actual, EAP and SMCS, and also EPIC, there's the communication on the side between DoD and the licensees. Mainly my team, especially for that communication, although the services for the internal status updates also used it. But exchanging information, data that they needed to do their analysis. We had a separate SharePoint portal set up. It was called Daycamp. I don't remember what that stood for. But it was we hosted it on our DISA SharePoint sites to make sure that we were and with strict access rules, so that we could exchange all the information we needed between our engineering team and the MilDeps, and so we could integrate the response back to the licensees. Sorry. Yeah, the other thing was, there are times, the other thing, in sharing data, we always run into, it's not, what data can we share with the licensees? We can only get to the CUI. And we couldn't use the early entry portal to share that information, so we would send that via DoD Safe. And we also ran into access issues once our Daycamp site went from, I don't remember which version of SharePoint, but it moved on to SharePoint Online. And then we had access issues for our contractors that didn't have GFE. Part of that, what we learned is it'd be really good to get everything on the same platform. So this is actually what we've taken a bunch of those lessons learned from AWS3 and are using them in the development of ASCS, the automated spectrum coordination system, for 3450 to 3550 or 3.45 gigahertz. And it will also give us, make it easier for all the stakeholders to see the status of spectrum sharing, from a specific coordination request to a bigger, looking at it at a grosser level. How is sharing going on the East Coast versus the West Coast at Fort Bragg, versus Cherry Point, things like that, and allow us to do more automated business analytics. One of the things that we do, actually we still do, or generate statistics of how many CRs get submitted. But anyway, so I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but in general, having a portal to facilitate, these, especially the communication between all the stakeholders, is really important, including and with the structure, governance, standard operating procedures, is what will make, in my opinion, I guess I should have said this at the beginning, this is my opinion, make it successful. It is hard, but I think, there's a way to do this. One of the other things from AWS3 is, and we're learning with all our portals, they are currently funded with the Spectrum Relocation Funds, the revenue that came from the auction. Once our DISA transition plan is done, the ones that we need to find we call it post SRF funding, to make sure they stay up and get maintained. Because the pity is, you build the automation, you get all your users comfortable with it, but you don't have a way to maintain it. So we're still working on that as for the long term. But like for early entry portal, it's designed to sunset in May-June timeframe. SMCS will be operational until 2026. And we're working on post-transition plan funding for that. Same with TARDIS, and same with ASCS. Sorry, didn't leave a lot of time for questions. I'll stop blabbing.
Good
Anybody have any
morning,
questions?
Joy.
I'm sorry.
This is Elvira Pierce. Good morning,
Hi,
Joy.
Elvira.
I missed you from being out here. So anyway, I wanted to agree with you that AWS3 was a challenge. We learned a lot of things with that, the effort. And one of the things that kind of chapped my hide was the licensees, they bought into their license based on when we would leave Spectrum. But then we got kind of like strong arm and I want early. No one's fault on the DoD side, but I just felt like you knew what you bought into. Maybe you're having buyer's remorse and, oh, I want it right now. So I think in moving forward, we should never have to feel strong-armed into leaving Spectrum to allow a licensee to come in earlier than they have to. Just, oh, and also Dwayne said hi.
Hello. No, yes, that time was very uncomfortable, and we were bullied. But part of it was, a misunderstanding of, one of the licensees thought I submit a CR and you guys get out. Well, that wasn't the way the plan was written. But they came at us, and it was uncomfortable, and we did what we could. And they were able to, get, some improvement, but I think some of the others just said, all right, we'll just wait, because they didn't want to invest in some of the changes to do things like notching. But yeah, it's a tough place to be, Elvira. I agree. You and I went through the mud together.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as we look at the other bands, and we know how it's going with Ambit, and I'm not going to say a lot about that. I think we're doing it in such a professional manner, even though there's times where there could be like a bad campaign on DoD, but we're doing what we need to do, and we're protecting our assets like we're supposed to do. And thank you. That ends my comments.
Always good to hear you, Elvira.
Hey, good morning, Joy. Jose here, back on the mic. Looking on the room, don't see any additional hands go up, and the chat room was fairly quiet. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the flexibility. I know we have to do a little moving around, so I appreciate it. And if they could be as a testament to, we're not going to be able to answer Michael McAdams' emails right now. We're a little busy. So
I will let him know.
asking for a little grace on those suspense that he sent out. So thank you much, Joey, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, team, so we're going to shift things over now, continuing the conversation. So we've heard about Spectrum monitoring capabilities. So Spectrum Guard Pro is going to be in the podium. So I know some of the Marines in the audience and sailors get excited. So I'm going to set the floor over for Mr. Jerome, so he's going to be able to start diving into this good topic. So.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So first off, I feel a little bit inadequate in front of you guys. I'm not a spectrum manager. You guys, your professionalism, your knowledge about spectrum management and everything going on, it's impressive, first of all. My name's Jerem Voiles. I'm the account manager for the Navy and Marine Corps team at CACI. We can call it khaki, that's okay. I used to wear khakis, so it's all right. My background is I'm a retired Navy Master Chief linguist. So I did 11 years active duty, submarines, and then went to TIO program with NSW to support the SEAL teams doing tactical electronic warfare on the ground and targeting. Then I got out after 11 years, and I went to the reserves and finished my career there, a couple of senior enlisted advisor tours, and then ended up at CACI, during my reserve time, and I've been here for about 6.5 years. So started out as a trainer, but now I lead the Navy and Marine Corps sales team, basically working with James Brennis, who's a former MARSOC SIGINTer. On our team, on the slide here, we've got Matt Stiller. He is a spectrum manager. So he went to spectrum manager school as a Marine, and he's continued that work over with us. He's based out of Camp Pendleton, so he's at the units almost every day, knocking on doors, helping with signature evaluations, threat emitter activities where we're bringing and retransmitting signals to help Marines see what they look like and work in a contested environment, right? And then Josh Trigg, another MARSOC SIGINTer guy. Really knowledgeable team. Matt's down on the floor doing manning the booth, right? So if you want to see the Spectrum Guard in action, we can go down there, we can do that. I'm not going to talk a lot about, it's not a sales pitch, I understand that. It's a little different to have a vendor up here on the stage, and I appreciate that. But what we want to talk about primarily is how we support the Marine Corps. We don't view ourselves as a vendor. We are people, individuals who have done the job, who have been on the ground, and we get that, and we want to be a mission partner, and that's how we've established ourselves with our Marines. So I'd be remiss, my boss's boss would be mad at me if I didn't show KACI's mission statement, but as I said, my mission statement is to get the warfighter what they need, right? And what they need is the ability to sense and make sense of the spectrum, right? You can't operate in a domain if you can't visualize the terrain, right? All right, so USMC Spectrum mission, don't need to tell you how to do your job, right? But then we go back to the Commandant's guidance. So sensing and making sense of the environment. How do we do that? And then other Marine Corps tasks. So just a couple of things that I wanted to pull out of here. So primarily, I've underlined them because I'm not going to read the word solid to you, but planning and coordinating electromagnetic and information fires, management of force signature, and emission control, right? And how do you know what you're emitting if you can't see it? All right. Let's get into it. So Spectrum Guard, for those of you who are not familiar, it is a small, lightweight, portable, self-contained system. A lot of times I explain it as a spectrum analyzer on steroids, right? So 1K to 26.5 gigs in one box. We have a frequency extender for 44.5 gigs. Run a baseline of the environment, so I can see what signals are out there. I can determine, based off analysis and fusion with the 2 or the 3.9, what signals belong there, what's normal, what does right look like. I can set that baseline up to run a 24/7 baseline, so I know what 2 in the morning looks like, vice 2 in the afternoon, because we know those environments can be completely different. and then a comparative analysis to compare that new energy. Hey, what new signals have come up since I ran this baseline? That baseline can be archived and used by anybody else with a spectrum guard. So if somebody else is moving into the area, you have a great, thorough baseline. Share that with everybody else. Now they have it when they come in. Now they know when those new signals come up, and it just gets you on task that much faster. Built-in Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and Zigbee capabilities, so I can monitor those environments as well. What does everybody carry around with them, even when they're not supposed to? Phones, watches, smart rings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So how do you know if there's not one of those in your formation that's potentially giving away a potential vector for an adversary to attack, right? Or at least to exploit, all right? So all the bullet points that you see on this slide, those are all things that are taken straight out of those Marine Corps tasks, right? Those are all in there, whether it's identify interference, manage your own force signature, sense the EMS, verify MCON. Spectrum Guard gives you that ability. So several years ago when I first took over, they said, hey, we need to start getting outside of the technical surveillance countermeasures space, the CI space. We're not getting out of it, we just need to expand beyond it, right? Because that's what the system was initially built for. Unintended emissions from a skiff or unauthorized devices, go and find them, right? So we've built in a lot of new capabilities that are focused primarily on spectrum management and electronic warfare tasks. So for example, the ability to import a JERFL or a SFAF into the Spectrum Guard and overlay it on the spectrum and view those assigned frequencies and then quickly identify when there's something that's not supposed to be transmitting on one of those. You can select all the fields that you want displayed as you hover over your overlay, and it'll give you all that data. And then something else that we've done is our work with, our work with the Marine Corps Software Factory. So our MARSOC G6 team, they went to Marine Corps Software Factory with the problem. Hey, we need the ability to view a CEOI and our PACE plan, our MCON plan as well, and quickly and efficiently identify and mitigate interference. So we met with them, did a technical exchange. They identified a few things that needed to be updated with our software to allow them, primarily the ability to import that new file type. So that's a quick change that we provided them. We updated our systems and our software, sent it back to them, and now they had that ability to upload that COI that was based on a common format that was determined by the MARSOC G6, and now they can import a file that's standard and can be overlaid on the spectrum and integrated into this TAC application. So what it'll do is, red, yellow, green, co-channel, adjacent channel interference, identify that quickly, say we're being interfered with, we need to roll pace, etc. I think, what was his name? Matt, the captain there at Marine Corps Software Factory. I thought he was speaking at some point here, but it might have been in a different room and presenting this. But now that's available to all DoD. So anybody with DoD TAC account can pull that down, and their Spectrum Guard will work with that application. All right, backing up one again. So Spectrum Guard, easy to take out, easy to use, but it's actually optimized for remote operations. So these systems can be dispersed across the battlefield and remotely monitored from one location to give you a granular view of the EMS in your operating environment. Our previous speaker, Mr. Portune from Peraton, spoke about Oscar and the work we did with them. I set my system up, put it on a VPN, and gave them access to the API and to the system so that they could do their development remotely. And they were able to take that and use it at Fort Huachuca, the Intel Center of Excellence, and a lot of other locations to demonstrate that interoperability, the ability to have distributed sensors feeding into a common operating picture. We have a similar capability built into the Spectrum Guard as well. We call it the Resource Manager. We've taken program of record systems in the Marine Corps for dismount backpackable direction finding, and we've integrated with that on our own dime, because we know that the spectrum doesn't just affect the G6 or the S6. It affects everybody. The 3-9, the 2, the commander has to make informed decisions based off of the information he's getting from his advisors, and that's just one more way where we can support those other functions in the battle space. So a lot of the conversations taking place during this conference do deal with kind of that strategic level or in garrison level spectrum management, but what do you do in a tactical environment? What do you do when you go from competition to conflict? You still have to ensure comms. You still have to ensure your spectrum dependent systems are operating, because no comms, no bombs, right? All right, so yeah, and not just those program as record backpackable systems, multiple Spectrum Guards can also be networked, synchronized, and used to geolocate emitters within that footprint. And then for those dismount backpackable systems, tip new frequencies of interest. Hey, this isn't coming from my formation. The 2 or the 3-9 needs to know about that, so now they can go and they can do their thing. All right, we can move on from this. And if any of you would like to see the Spectrum Guard and discuss further, I'll be downstairs as well after this until the show ends at 12:30. All right, so in the Marine Corps, I'll back up. Spectrum Guard, 1,200 systems fielded, all DoD, branches of service, DOE, USG, NATO partners, Five Eyes. It's a non-ITAR controlled system. It's commercially available, so it's easy to use and there's no restrictions on where you take it and how you use it. About 155 systems fielded in the Fleet Marine Force across all MEFs, MAR4 Res, MARSOC, and other elements within that. And then currently pursuing additional systems in the CYD process. All right, some of the exercises we've supported, and our team, there's 4 members on the Navy Marine Corps team, but we also have a former MARSOC Spectrum Manager on our Army team. For example, former MARSOC Marine who is on our SOCOM team. So all of these guys have experience supporting the Marine Corps, and we do about 100+ days of travel for each of us supporting different events. So this is by no means an extensive list of what we've done, just showing some of the highlights. The threat emitter that I discussed earlier, there in front of the aircraft, mimicking a downed aircraft, and then using direction finding to go and do that rescue operation. For example, Camp Pendleton, MLRTEs, Cosmic Ram up in Idaho. One of our field support reps is in Jacksonville, so he's always at Camp Lejeune. Matt's always at Camp Pendleton because he lives in the Oceanside area. And then HAB system will travel, right? So if you need a demo, if you need an evaluation, signature evaluation or anything like that, we're a phone call away. All right, any questions up to this point? The last remaining slides are really OVs. You guys can have some of your time back, that's fine with me. But I want to make sure that there's no additional questions on the Spectrum Guard side or any of the operations that we support. Yes?
Hey, good morning. Staff Sergeant Schumann from 1 MIG. I just wanted to, so we work extensively with SSF, and they're starting to push to integrate the Spectrum Guard Pro and system that you have with it. When do you think that we could actually see that happen?
Yeah, I'd like to see it happen tomorrow.
That'd be great, yeah.
But You know, it's interesting. We've had some talks with them. We've heard about SSF for a long time, right? One of the things with that is you're not getting integrated in that unless you're a program of record. However, the user demand from the Fleet Marine Force is driving that requirement to get Spectrum Guard integrated into SSF. So we've had discussions with them. Initially, we were told 18 months.
It's an extensive timeline. I think
However,
FY '27 is their expected date.
yeah, so I push back on that because when we were working with the Army, they said you have to be integrated with EWPMT. We got a copy of the EWPMT, and a week later we had a Spectrum Guard feeding data into EWPMT. It will not take 18 months. Our API is open, and we share it freely with anybody who requests it. Anybody within reason, you know. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Anybody who has a Spectrum Guard, we will share it with you, or anybody who says they're integrating with Spectrum Guard. I know the Oscar team, it was a matter of weeks before they had Spectrum Guard data feeding into Oscar. So it's not going to take 18 months. They need to get with us. Our engineering team is based out of Thousand Oaks, California, 15 minutes from Point Mugu.
Right up the street, yep.
So phone call, I fly out, I get with my engineering team, we'll host them. It doesn't matter. And we will share our API, and we'll also make changes to the software that are required to get them talking to each other the way they need to.
Great. In our next talks, we'll relay that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Just answer your question? Yeah. It's not working. Oh, to answer your question, we're moving at the pace of government, right? And that's what we're trying to get our mindset out of. The procurement process, this, that, right? You have to get through those barriers. They're ready to do this tomorrow. So it's not on their office. It's on our office, and we're working that problem.
Yeah, it goes a lot slower than I talk. So I get nervous and I start talking really fast. So anybody else? All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of the show. I'm glad I got you before the afternoon of the last day at least.
All right, so keeping things moving, we're about to change to a more exciting topic, and that's going to be led by Mr. David Willis from UpNAF M2N6, and that's policy. So everybody, it got really boring and tired with Spectrum Guard Pro and what they're doing in the field, but here comes Mr. David Willis, clutch, to get us excited again.
Thank you. Hey, I don't know what any of that's supposed to mean, but I just want to apologize to you guys up front, first of all, because this was not originated as a presentation to you. This, is, in fact, is a, I'm using you guys as a test pilot and a kind of an introduction to how we plan to put and update our OpNav Instruction 2400. So I would be remiss if I did not mention the support, the team that surrounds us from Mark and I in that office. We're constantly, as we would say, he would say hand to mouth, I would say foot to mouth. It's kind of going pretty expeditious in the office. So Art, you and your team, thank you. Thank you for always directing us through your policies, which makes us put another policy out, right? So thank you. Now this attempt is a merge from our standard EQ Spectrum policies document, merging our Spectrum Relocation Fund document. It's going to be geared to the sailors. I don't see a lot of sailors in here. So again, I'm using you as a test platform. As we conduct our road show, we will be intimate with them. A lot of the information you've already seen. So we won't spend a lot of time on that. So we will get out of here on time for lunch. But at the end of the day, we will be returning in fleet-concentrated areas, speaking with the sailors themselves. Now, where did the school guy go? Where did Mr. Segura go? So just a little bit about me. I am a spectrum manager. I graduated from IRFMS. I still have that kind of loyalty with IRFMS. I have a problem with people not knowing math. Mr. Palacio, we were in class together hanging out. We did not like math, but the realization of it is these systems don't work all the time. And sometimes you need a little bit of common sense, a mathematical sense to actually check these tools that we have as well. Now, again, I'm intimate. I'm saying that because you've seen me stand up a couple times. These type of meetings give me anxiety because this is a pack mentality. The challenge is when I'm looking at Navy, I have to help them understand that what creates a great pack is that there are different levels of responsibilities. As being part of that pack, you have to be the best at what you can be at your level to ensure that the pack actually functions well. I know I'm not a tech writer, so Ms. Ashley Tillman, she's our technical professional writer, and she's been kind of like, David, are you sure this should go there? Or she's been, you've magnified everything that I thought of, so thank you as well. I received numerous inputs from Navy Marine Corps Spectrum Office, NSWCDD, NS Dahlgren as well, and because a lot of the times they will be mostly impacted. So thank you, Dahlgren, if you're listening, and definitely thank you, Navy Marine Corps Spectrum team. You guys have been phenomenal. So I can drive. Of course, you've seen our organization, and this is the agenda. The major difference will be in our discussion portions where it says the audit findings, SRF roles and responsibilities, and SRF transition plan template, which you've probably never seen. This is, and may not even affect you, but within the Navy, we're attempting to establish a consistent product so that when we're reporting to the Don, who's heavily engaged in the SRF portion and very regulatory, that we're doing it in a manner that eases their responsibility as well. This is our organization. So you see all those people in that second box in the middle. It's a lot going on, and I will tell you, a lot of our engagements, going back to the mouth to foot or the hand to foot, come at they come with the requirement of now. I thank all of you who've been available on the other end of those phone calls, answering our questions so that we can provide our leadership the correct response. And this is the overall purpose. As you notice, you see two documents on the left, and the idea is to, as you can read it, is to formally combine, to provide an official framework to solidify and ensure, define and socialize with which also aligns with the roadshow that you've been hearing, and codify and address the audit findings and nullify our current OpNav instruction 2420 Golf. The scope and applicability. Now, this should not be new, and I kind of went heavy on policy and E3 before we got towards the SRF purpose because, again, it's developed to be a conversation piece, to be a discussion. So we'll be sitting at a round table. I won't be sitting at a podium with a remote. We'll be literally talking this through. The reality is, regardless of how you pay for any CE, communication electronic equipment, it's still required to go through those identical same processes before it can emit. I would be asking them, do you agree? Would you agree? Everyone in here, for the most part, understands the E3 and spectrum supportability requirements. You all understand that. but do you do it at the level that you are? Are you required to do it at the level that you are? As far as we created this document, we went to all of the, not all of the, but the specific commands that we affect on a day-to-day basis. We're looking at their mission, function, and task. What is it that you say that you do? What is it that you're supposed to do? Because walking out of a meeting like this, if we had, I can only imagine a new spectrum manager walking out if you're saying that they have to do all of these things. The reality is you just have to understand those things and know where to go. You have a specific thing that your command does. Find out what that thing is. During our, as we share the document, by the way, this is not the document. This is just the reasoning of how, or the concept behind how we're going to merge the document. Helping them understand where they fit in the big scheme of things. Helping them be able to ensure that their documentation or their rules and regulations adhere to ultimately the command that's above them, up to CNO and as well as CMC, and based on the SECNAV 2400, which kind of starts off saying, almost in every paragraph, the CNO shall. The CMC shall. Now, this is a continuation of it. And we've kind of touched, multiple offices here kind of touched on these particular areas, referring all the way down to frequency assignments. And, I just can't wait to get to the part where, just talking about the results of the audit, because there's an assumption that every spectrum manager is created equal by some people. There's an assumption out there, but in here, I guess we really, really know. Right? Does the Army do this differently? You create assignments differently? Shouldn't. Does the Marine Corps create it differently? No, assignments are assignments. And another purpose of this particular documentation is to capture those major commands where we had an instance where the OpNav 2420 Foxtrot was a total of about 44 pages. Our current document is 10 pages. And understand all of these documents have to be shared across our complete, the CNO codes, all the way across and up and down the ladder for anyone that's being affected. What I've learned from a few program reviews is that when we modified our document, it took out the key defining documents that allowed subordinate commands to execute their requirements. And that's why we're re-looking at it as well. But I would tell you, our current leadership in the building, they do not believe in fixing your problem with the stroke of a pen. Why should we modify the document when the spectrum managers know what they're supposed to do? I mean, what do you say? I don't stutter that often, but I literally stuttered at the tape. But. So we overcame that piece. So fortunately, when SECNAV created their Spectrum Relocation Fund, Instruction 2400, we again had to follow suit. We did not want to create two new documents. We wanted to merge our documents because, again, the requirements for EQ spectrum supportability is and should be the same. There is a difference where the funding comes from, the program offices associated with it, but those requirements still do exist. And here's the background. You've seen this. I think the Don team has done an excellent job explaining, giving the historical value of from SRF's perspective. The first turnoff that I get when I'm visiting some areas, and this is a very bad one for me, it's whatever the scenario is, that someone at a particular command will walk up to me and say, I would definitely, how do I get a hold of some of that SRF money. I get that at least 3 to 4 times in here this week. I mean, just to be clear, Spectrum Relocation Funds are in a direct coordination or effect to something that the Navy lost or the Marine Corps lost. And how do you fit? So it's you may see a big pot of money, but those funds there are associated with a task. And I'm not going to help anyone try to figure out how to take funds. If you don't have a requirement, we're not talking requirements, we can't go straight to talking money. I know Gary, she's not in here, but she will hold me accountable to that. Again, you've seen this one. This is a standard EQ supportability graph. Continuation. I like the second bullet. Each command, activity, project, or program office, laboratory, or facility is accountable for the implementation and enforcement of those standards. Ultimately, it comes up to the building for signature, but those commands are ultimately responsible. Thereby, when we were talking SSRAs, Mr. Johnson, Mark Mojo Johnson, if you guys haven't heard Mojo all day today, so Mojo Johnson kind of made some requests. I mean, for the most part, asking for a little more detailed information. And it's important that each of those commands realize that it is their responsibility. The funding types. Again, there's a process. I don't know if any of you took the opportunity to, there was a breakout room specifically by Mr. Miles and Kara in another space set aside just to discuss funding. And I would tell you that they are always prepared to discuss, to provide insight, to provide input, and kind of sometimes give you a way ahead. I would ask you, though, that when you're discussing with the Don for a way ahead and you're in the Navy family, I would ask you to ensure that our Navy, there's a Navy representation there. And it's not for, to ensure, to see what your question is to the Don, it's really to be able to execute it faster, because when you go to the Don with something and it's a Navy concern, they will refer straight to us. And so it's just allows your request to be responded to a little bit faster. And we hear the exact same question initially. For me, I may have some insight that the Don doesn't have because their requirements are completely different. And again, I don't want you to go directly to them that way, because now you're providing an environment for them hand to mouth, mouth to foot, when they actually have other requirements to do as well. Again, there's that pot of money. Anybody want some? You said no? You're the check writer. So, discussion processes and updates. This is kind of where the discussion will be more or less intimate with the whatever commands we're referring to, and we will see the multiple of those commands. Now, there was the developmental history of the OpNav instruction. It goes back to ultimately the 44 pages to the 10 pages. We took a lot of major content out. From where we sit, we didn't realize that it was affecting so many. I think we had a program review in Nav Air, Ms. Crispell. She initially said she wants to be at this briefing. I'm like, well, okay, but really to ensure that the language, the documentation that's required to be in our instruction that enforces their instruction is resubmitted in this document. And we definitely plan to do that. So if I can get anything out of this, I would hope that you would provide us your major commands, your major concerns when it comes to a policy perspective. Again, we're a little bit disconnected in the building because we're looking kind of here and up. But when we have these type of venues, this is your opportunity to touch us physically and say, hey, what about me? Audit response. So I just wanted to just go over the summary of the audit response. And for me, reporting to the office with Mark Johnson at that particular time, and one of the first things that came across my desk was the audit. Like, who was there? Anyway, in summary, there were spectrum managers interviewed, so I'll read it. It says, number one was interview spectrum managers and owning units of sampled assignments to determine roles and responsibilities. This is one of the outcomes of the Naval Audit Team. They were to access the accuracy of sample frequency assignments records based on feedback from Navy Marine Corps spectrum officers, spectrum managers, and owning units to determine if they enter the frequency assignment and modifications and deletions into Spectrum 21. That's a lot, and it's how often do we delete those assignments once we put them in Spectrum 21? I would tell you that some have not. I believe there are assignments that I submitted many, many, many years ago, and don't date me because of the beard. This is dye, but someone said no, it's not. Yeah, but the fact is, it's really from cradle to grave. If you submit a requirement, if you submit for an assignment, go all the way through it. When you get that assignment, when you're done, close it out. Ensure that you inform whomever gave you that assignment that it's ready, prepared for deletions. Now, they came back with multiple results saying that, of the pool that they pulled, there were quite a bit of assignments that were still in there. So, and I'll explain how that particularly helps us when it comes to the call to action. I'll just jump right in it now. The call to action, for example, when there is a spectrum audit, things of that nature where it's, we have to gather information, we have to gather it quickly. So the idea is initially to go straight to Spectrum 21 and do a pull. And you've all heard garbage in, garbage out. Spectrum 21 has so many records. Our first pull was quite a few records, quite a few assignments, quite a few requirements being that was identified. Ultimately, a lot of those, once we tried to, now mind you, we're taking this data, we're pushing it to engineers, we're pushing it to our leadership saying, hey, this is why funding stays behind Spectrum 21, because it allows us to do A, B, C, or D. Lo and behold, once you go through it like with a little more finitely, we learned that a lot of those systems don't exist anymore. A lot of those requirements don't exist anymore. So we are asking for you at whatever level you are, whatever, it could be someone who's long gone, but you still own that particular FAO, clear yours out. Go through it. I think they have this thing called 5-year review. I really don't know what that means. Do you? This is not a question for you. This is me rehearsing for when I talk to the sellers. Additionally, it said to determine if installation commanders designate an installation spectrum manager as required. I've heard so many people saying that there's a major problem where there are no installation spectrum managers. Is having an installation spectrum manager significant? Is it even required? Is anyone in here affiliated with an installation spectrum manager? Raise it. Where are you at? Okay, NMCI West. Pendleton? Marine Corps affiliated? You guys got it right. Okay, thanks. I'm not asking more questions if just the Marine gonna come up, but thank you for that. So as your role as the installation, and this is not to you, you don't have to answer this, I'm saying your role is to ensure that the area within the EMOE you have some type of visibility on it. Is that correct? No? Thank you for that. So with the exception of this thing called collateral duties across our naval services, Navy service, because naval includes the Marine Corps, right? We're attempting to capture that. We're responding to that. The audit made that very clear, and which forced the SecNav instruction to conduct an out-of-cycle update, which also forces OpNav and CMC, or CNO and CMC to conduct an out-of-cycle update. So it's that important that we're updating those instructions now. Go ahead, Dalion.
So one of the key aspects, and I realize audits are never good for any of us, but it's the only method to see how I'm doing. And those key aspects of making change, the key piece is that audit is being submitted to my boss, and that's been our number one problem from a Spectrum standpoint, because we look at the context of we'll make it happen, and if we can make it happen without our leadership knowing, because that's what we do, we're very good at getting things done. But until our leadership's involved, we don't get what we need. This is part of getting what we need. We know that there's been a problem with installation spectrum managers. We're going to fix that. This is part of that process. Spectrum Relocation Fund, my number one problem is how am I spending that money, and am I spending it correctly based on the regulation and requirements? The only method that I know can tell if I'm doing something wrong is to ensure that I'm holding myself accountable as well. So that foundation is holding us accountable and making sure that leadership is involved with making changes so it impacts us not only at the strategic level, but at the tactical level as well. And that's part of it. And bringing up some great points, David, but that's the foundation. We can't continue to think that we're going to get it done on our own, and we need those leaders involved. And this is how we get it done.
Thank you. And that's directly from the Don. You want to hear? The reality is this a domino effect. We will update our documentation, which is the language that came out of the SecNav instruction that says CNO shall, will be turned right around and say CNIC shall. Naval Marine Corps Spectrum Office shall. All the entities who play in any of this spectrum ecosystem will probably get a shall. It may not be from my office, but it should be one that's following suit based on the documentation that or the direction that we're actually providing. And if it doesn't fix it, we want to know. We want to know. We want to help you. We're there to help you. We are funding the majority of the commands that are affiliated with the spectrum, especially on the Navy side. I also wanted to touch the SRF roles and responsibility for OpNav's partners and stakeholders. Who's a partner and stakeholder within the Navy who has a role in the Spectrum Relocation Fund? That's any and everyone who's receiving any of those funds. Any and everyone who, there goes that pot of money request right there. I want some. Everybody wants some, so, but with them. What's in it for me? So, and ultimately introduce the SRF transition plan template. Here is kind of what the verbatim from the audit. So updating assignments as changes occur. And I want to reflect all the way down to Delta. I don't think they're in order. So A or D Delta corresponds with Alpha. Updating frequency assignments as changes occur, i.e. being modify and delete inaccurate frequencies and assignments and records. That could be a sub-bullet under that first Alpha. Now, ironically, you see incorporating verbiage tied to DON-CIO's policy as codified in tab F, which is associated in the real document, and the Navy EMS guide, NTP6. Mind you, the NTP6 is a publication. It is not law. But I believe NAV I-4, correct me if right, it's NAV-I4's document, right? For NTP6, published by NAV-I4, James? Yes, ultimately, the connection to what we would say, the sailors and the war fighters. So it is a very good document. It took me to come all the way up to Echelon 1 in the Navy to understand that the NTP isn't even, I can't even direct anyone from the NTP. All these years, including the DI, I get an Echelon 1 and not realize that NTP 6 was just a guide. I mean, I took the NTP 6 into our leader's office and said, ha, pages, this is what it says, this is what it says, this is what it says, and I learned something that day, and I'm not afraid to share it. So NTP 6 is a guide, and it's not a governing document per se. Establish a requirement to have installation spectrum managers, and I think, Mr. Arthur DeLeon just expounded on that as well. They've already updated their instruction to SecNav instruction 2400. And we, I'm sorry, .4. .4? Yeah, 2400.4. Yeah, only dots coming from a financial person. It's not millions. But, but the point is they've updated their documentation. We're in the process of updating ours as well to match that particular language. And then we have to ultimately probably work out a way to find funding, because how can we at Echelon 1 direct commands to create a position in writing with their responsibilities and not be able to support them? That's going to be a challenge once it filters all the way down. And I don't know, I could probably, where did he go? It's SRF money, right? No, he left. And C, implementing standard operating procedures for spectrum managers' awareness. And that's kind of at a lower level. There you go. I didn't see you walk away. Yeah. So these standard operating procedures should be procedures that kind of created an environment at whatever level you are, stating what those requirements are. Now, there was a time where our leaders were not recognized. They recognized that there was a requirement for a spectrum manager. But we aren't there yet where well, we are. Based on a lot of these auctions, we're coming to find out that our leaders are well aware of a spectrum manager now. Are they well aware of the level of spectrum management? Not so much, because we've been trying to always fix that from within. You see with Vice Admiral Thomas, and then it was Vice Admiral Trustler prior to that. We meet regularly with Ms. Edgen, the B code. Just spectrum is one of the most common conversations, not just due to auctions, but due to the operations that spectrum clearly affect. So, with that being said, if you're not on your A game, if you need help, you have to reach out to someone. Because at the end of the day, the products that you push up, that you produce, that you may think that's only affecting you in your particular area of responsibility at that time, can and possibly will be captured to provide a picture in the Pentagon. I don't know, the training that you're doing, we want to capture, we need you on our team. I know you love what you're doing right now. Yeah, you. We really want to take an opportunity to understand your mind on how, because you're touching sailors. I am a sailor to death, but the last time I was on the ship was the Truman, and that was a tour. So, and my legs still feel that walking all the way up and down those ladders. So, not that excited about that part, but if you can help us wrap our minds around to be able to not only appreciate what they're doing, but to be able to capture it in our documents and policies, we would appreciate that. Go ahead, sir, because this is in it.
Sure, I just had a kind of more of a comment than a question. So when the audit came around, 1MEF and 145 were some of the units that were audited. When I had a conversation with Mr. Gary Vogel, some of the inaccuracies that we found with old equipment, as you mentioned, was that a lot of us just don't know when a piece of gear is end of life. Right, when we talk to some old, retired gentlemen, they're like, "Oh yeah, that was in my time," and that's kind of how you know. So one of the comments I had to Mr. Grogol was like, "Does a repository exist when like a system becomes end of life?" Just because we go to Hunswood to figure out, and we have SPS in the drift, so we know when a system is certified, when it's active, when it can be used. But I don't know that there's a location where we can go to find out when a system can no longer be used, right? As an easy kind of fact-checking type of system. Does something like that exist?
I can't say that it does, but I would refer, James, did you hear that question? Yeah, I don't think there is. Yeah. So our majority of the spectrum questions we have, even though we have oodles and noodles of spectrum experience in the Pentagon, we refer it to the Center of Excellence. We should take that as an action. Got it. Yep.
Just so everybody can hear, we should take that as an action to ensure that we're tracking how do we improve that process to ensure that there's some type of site that they can look at decommissioned systems and balance it off what is being published in our spectrum records.
Thank you. I would almost add that, with the increase of AI technology, if we can program those records to end, it self-deletes. It's just, as we got to think outward, right? But before we have to capture it, though, to start thinking that way. So thank you. Until then, though, we have a person who put that record in. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Evan.
So I just want to back up just a little bit and give the audience some easy reading. So if you would look at Annex O of the NTI manual, it begins to speak to you on what happens for a transition plan, from how the auction starts, what the template looks like. It's a good foundation baseline for you so that you'll know the type of things we're going through in the Beltway. So Annex O, if you didn't write it down, I'm stumping my foot one more time. Annex O of the NTIA manual, then you'll know what other questions to ask as we're trying to repurpose or have data calls. All right, now, I'm gonna quiz you guys later. I'm gonna say, what did I say? Annex O, NTIA manual. Thank you.
I would tell you that the NTIA manual tells you a whole lot of things. I believe it's what we should be basing. I mean, everything that I'm talking about right now, I think is laid out in the NTIA manual of the things that we should be doing. It's just, earlier this week, I mentioned this thing about Spectrum 101. I mean, I'm not sure that the Bible or the Quran of Spectrum is the NTIA manual. I mean, red book, right? I mean, we talk it, but are we using it? Are we following the rules? Do we understand it? And I'm not asking, I will not be asking from a Navy's perspective, I will not be asking those sailors about it holistically. I will only be asking them, what are they doing within their area of responsibility? When you become the best in your area of responsibility, again, you're aiding the pack, as we would say. Let's brand it. This is going to be my biggest challenge. This is going to cause the most headache. This is where the commands push back in. What you're going to see, if you're lucky to have to deal with this instruction from a Navy side, is you'll see two columns. Those two columns will kind of break. It kind of comprises the SysComs, the Nav I4, Nav Air, Nav War, and Nav C. Of course, it will show the responsibilities that are based on the E-Cube and Spectrum, and it will also show how that's affiliated with in SRF. Two columns. We're just making it easy. It's a quick read, but the reality is I'll go back to, because we mentioned the NTIA manual, the requirements for any type of emitting equipment does not change. If you just stuck with the NTIA manual, you'll never be wrong. But we'll get pushbacks because, as we enter the SRF realm, there are specific and deliberate requirements stated of how we get to an approved transition plan. The recipient will be providing us that data. We will be coordinating and crossing the T's and dotting the I's to ensure that it does align with the Navy's overall requirements. This will prevent anyone from thinking and or assuming that they have access to that pot of money. It clearly goes to a task associated with the requirement. It also involves Navy installations, bases, tenant commands, activities and subordinate commands, PEOs, and other naval organizational entities. Sir.
Establishes in following role saying the ISSM. Well, that billet structure has to be captured in the NTSP. So has some of that already been worked out so we can capture that in the latest NTSP that we're working on?
I would turn the question back around to you. What establishes the NTSP? So it's a domino effect, sometimes reverse. So we have to look at what is the establishment of the requirement for having an NTSP, and we have to go from that way. What we're trying to do, what we cannot do, is we can't go, regardless of my 45 years of spectrum experience, where did Art go? I want to say it's not necessarily all Army, because it's an internal joke for him, but the realism of this is that it has to have checks and balances. Right? We can't go on experience alone. I can't go, I mean, I go to a meeting with Mark and we would argue all day. We would just debate all day. The fact is, it has to be somewhere in a policy. So we have to answer your question, how is that NTSP established? What are the requirements to that NTSP? Because if not, we'll be in the wild, wild west.
I'm with you.
So, no, you still can't get SRF funds.
I'm working.
I know.
I'll believe me. I'm telling. I'm gonna get some, even if it's $1.
And what so far you've heard that we are going to establish, we will be establishing installation spectrum managers. Again, the how is not, we will never tell a command how to squeeze the juice. We'll say this is a requirement. They will report that back up and we'll go accordingly. Chances are they will, 100%, they'll be asking for funds, but there's no new money. So we just have to figure that out. Now this template, of course there's a template in the NTIA manual, but then there's a Navy requirements. There, whatever your service requirements are, specifically those things that have to be answered, that's not going to have to go up through the entire chain of command for reference. It is almost like a local contract. This is what you say you're doing. Does the resource sponsor of this system that had to vacate or share have to change? Are they aware of what the program office is doing? Sometimes not. Program offices think that they're doing us a favor as requirement officers. I mean, ultimately they do, but sometimes we're not informed by what the program officers are doing. So this document is to capture what is it you're doing. We'll walk down the hallway in the building to the resource sponsor. Are you tracking that the program office is doing this for you? Sometimes we'll come across wait a minute, you can't spend spectrum relocation funds for the exact same thing that you've already palmed for. Wait a minute. So are you really changing, sharing? So that's the challenge. I'm kicking me off?
No, sir.
Okay. What was that? Oh, I've learned that part. Oh, thanks, Dan. So here again is the call to action. You've seen it with Mr. Johnson's earlier, but the fact is, it references when we shoot out a data call. Usually these data calls are, what we've learned, cannot be just Spectrum 21 dependent. There is an initial request via Spectrum 21. We would go out and query everything in a certain band. Then we have to bring that back. Then we have to go to the system owners. And once all of this information comes together, which we're in a working with our other codes now to try to figure out a way to create an environment where before our system can be not just tracked, but captured. And this goes back to Admiral Thomas's statement that he mentioned as he referenced Ms. Edgin, referring to shooting with a shotgun, vice a rifle. Do you all understand that? You're asking for everything. You're looking at it completely from the pack. To get a correct view, the right answer, you need to find the right spoke and get the response from there. It has been a challenge. I think we submitted a ETMS2 or TMT tasker 4 times. It took quite a few months. We have a substantial we have a substantial Excel spreadsheet full of documents or information. Now we have to parse through and see where the value is for the warfighter. Go ahead, Eva.
Okay. Excuse me. So, and when those data calls come out, so I was going to say I was an old Spectrum manager, but I'm not going to say that word. I'm going to say seasoned. So we don't look at those FERS records because we know what type of time those FERS records can be on. So we're looking more at the GMF records. So we need to make sure that we document the correct usage, you know, not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because that's where we're struggling when we're trying to clearly define our usage when we're trying to justify repurposing. So let's try to do that a little clearer. And also, when you're seeing these data calls come down to you, if we have something in the SSRA process, in the band that we're trying to repurpose and share, make sure we identify that too. So we need all of you to help us justify and defend our systems in the band. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just add to that, validate that information before it gets up there. Please validate it because it's going at the highest level. And it's ultimately to, as we capture it, there's value, but it's also to answer questions. Our leaders who are sitting in these congressional spaces so that they can answer the question. The logical one is, how often do you use that? You guys don't know. We push back. Spectrum managers don't know how often they use it. NMSC knows how often they use it. This is kind of the type of the feedback that we get. No one knows that but the user. And of course, during this show, we would like to input for the OpNav 2400.20 hotel. And I would say coordinate with our office to provide data. And this is myself, and I definitely put Ashley there because she is the person who captures this data, parses it out, makes it look like it's supposed to be, and keep me in a regulatory fashion. Because we cannot send a document that does not meet the standards of instructions throughout the building. And I'm in the space for the rest of the week. Thank you.
All right, David, thank you so much. Yep, sometimes it gets a little exciting to get into policy, but it's lunch break. So I didn't want to put that pressure ahead of time, but thank you, David. You took us all the way to lunch. So now we're going to go on from now till 12:30. We're going to go into lunch break. This afternoon, we got a couple of exciting things coming up. A, we're going to have more uniform folks in the podium. B, we're going to have some after action. So if there was a topic, questions, comment that was kind of lingering that we want to address, that's where the director kind of say, we're going to go ahead and try to open mic forum and be able to kind of discuss and try to pull the thread there. But lastly, before you guys go on break for lunch, don't forget the surveys for the summit conduct. So our supporting staff, Kara and Randall on the back, been handing them out. Please fill it out. It really goes a long way to kind of help us tell Ed and Jessica that we spend months setting this venue up to understand how we can do this better. So thank you very much. See you at 12:30 sharp.